In this time-lapse tutorial, I'm going to talk you through some of the processes I used to create this gorgeous landscape. Now for this painting, I wanted to begin with an initial oil painting wash. So I start with a mixture of some burnt umber. I wanted a really nice sort of moody atmosphere for this wet into wet painting. And into that I add a little bit of magenta. I'm looking for a really nice warm rich colour. And then also some burnt sienna. These are all transparent colours that I intend to put on as a wash on the whole canvas. Now, because I want this colour to influence all throughout the painting, I'm going to split the mixture in half. One half I'm going to keep to one side, and the other half I'm adding a little bit of thinners and putting a wash over the entire canvas. This is going on very thin and very transparently. Once I've got that initial wash, I actually use a paper towel and just very lightly give myself a bit of guide where I want some of my clouds and cloud shapes to go, just erasing back with that paper towel. So with that wet background now, I'm going to begin adding some colours for the sky, just starting in that lighter area. And at first you can't really see much difference because the colours are quite similar, but I'm adding light colours into the main area of the sky to create a little bit of a glowing effect. So I continue building up the sky, adding more blues and little bits of purple. And each time I load up the brush, I'm adding a tiny little bit of that initial colour, which is going to influence the whole of this painting. The paint starts to go a little thicker as I build up those layers. So starting with that very thin wash to begin with, and then building up from there with more and more thicker and more opaque paint on the top of that thinner wash. I like to use a nice big fluffy brush to keep everything lovely and soft. And I go back and forth, adding on and softening, adding some darks and lights and constantly softening until I've got the sky exactly how I want it. I do the same with the background, using that mop to constantly soften and make sure that those distant hills really look like they're in the distance. As I come forward in the painting, the colours get a little bit more saturated, but I always do add a little touch of that initial colour just to keep that colour harmony and that influence throughout the whole painting. When it comes to adding highlights to trees like this, you want that paint to be going on a little bit thicker and a little bit more opaque. For this main tree, once again, I'm back to scrubbing in very thin and very transparent colours, quite dark, and keeping those paints really thin and really transparent. You need to kind of get an initial dark in place in a nice thin way so that you can go and add those thicker highlights. So you can really see how I scrub in those thin transparent colours in preparation for laying down more thicker opaque colours on top. Here you can see me add in even more grasses, again with a little bit thicker paint. I continue to build up the dark tree trunks here and then switch to a liner brush to add lots of twigs and branches. So once again with our gentleman, I'm adding some nice thin paints, getting initial colour on there before switching to something a little brighter for that left hand side where he's got a little bit more of a highlight. And this is the end of the wet into wet session. At this point, I let the painting completely dry. And once it's dried, I want to bring a little bit of extra dark back into the tree. So I'm using some dark glazes here, really sort of bringing a lot of that darkness back that can sometimes get lost when you're doing wet into wet paintings. So don't feel you can't, if you decide to start with a wet onto wet, doesn't mean you have to stay that way. You can let it dry and then go back and add some finer details, which is what I'm doing here. This 4.5 hour tutorial is available on my Academy if you'd like to watch the entire process in full, along with all the tracings and references. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.